The Trump administration is vowing to appeal a federal judge ruling that threw out the criminal cases against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. The judge found prosecutor Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed. The ruling reads in part, all actions flowing from Ms. Halligan's defective appointment constitute unlawful exercises of executive power and must be set aside. We've got team coverage to break this all down. Scott Fredericksen is a former federal prosecutor. Let's start, he's going to join this discussion, but let's also bring in CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane. So, Scotty Mac, to you first. What were the major flaws in these cases, according to the judge?
It's interesting because the merits of this case were not part of this ruling. James Comey and Letitia James have not had an opportunity to argue against the allegations against them, the allegations they deny. What the judge, who was brought in from South Carolina to handle one narrow issue, decided was that narrow issue is critical, that the U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan, is not lawfully in her position, that the Trump administration did an end run around the Senate and an end run around the court system to keep her in place when she shouldn't have been. And because she's the only prosecutor who faced the grand juries to secure these indictments and was the only prosecutor who put her name on the cases against Letitia James and James Comey initially, the cases therefore collapse if she's not lawfully there.
So, Scott Fredericksen, the ruling was, quote, without prejudice. For folks who are watching us and are not lawyers, what does that mean and why is that so important?
That's a term of art in legal proceeding. It means the case can be refiled again, as long as it's done by a legitimately appointed U.S. attorney. However, the twist here is that for Mr. Comey, he was indicted just days before the 5-year statute of limitations ran. So while the case may be refiled against the New York Attorney General, the judge indicated that in her opinion, in dismissing the case against Mr. Comey can no longer be filed because the statute of limitations has run. And of course, the Department of Justice will fight that and appeal that. But that's what that means.
So, Scott Fredericksen, then, so this case wasn't decided on the merits, right? I mean, in other words, if the Trump administration is suggesting that both the former FBI director and the New York Attorney General did something wrong, the judge didn't even look at that, right? He's just looking at the prosecutor, Ms. Halligan.
She looked at just the procedural appointment of the U.S. attorney. A U.S. attorney is constitutionally required to be confirmed by the Senate. A president is allowed a 120-day interim appointment. There had already been an interim U.S. attorney appointed before Ms. Halligan, and he and his office apparently had declined to prosecute both Comey and James, and he was replaced. The court is saying you can't get around the constitutional requirement of confirming a Senate confirmation by continually appointing an interim U.S. attorney, and that's what she looked at. Now, this case also has 2 or 3 other serious challenges facing it, including how Ms. Halligan handled the grand jury. Serious questions have already been raised about that by the magistrate judge, and of course, there's motions pending for a vindictive prosecution.
All right, so Scotty Mac, then, what is the Trump administration saying about this? I know that they plan to appeal, and more importantly, I guess, how are Comey and Letitia James responding?
Yes, they're going to appeal, Vlad. They're also seeming to give some indication of what they plan to do with Lindsay Halligan. More on that in a moment. First, let me show you what James Comey had to say after this case was dismissed.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude's going to be the same. I'm innocent. I am not afraid.
Now, as for Lindsay Halligan, we checked over the last 24 hours. They are still putting her name on criminal cases as the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. That could be a conflict with yesterday's court ruling, but she's still operating in that post per court filings and per multiple sources speaking with CBS News, which could escalate that issue too. You got these criminal cases that have been dismissed. They're likely to be appealed. Now you have a whole different battle over Lindsey Halligan and the Trump administration's either adherence or defiance of court orders. So that's going to become a thing too.
Right. So then, Scott Fredericksen, what does this mean for other cases that the DOJ is prosecuting right now?
Every defendant that is indicted now with Lindsey Halligan's name on it is going to move for dismissal of the case and force the U.S. Attorney's Office to start over. I mean, this is one of the most important offices in the nation. It investigates and indicts terrorists, domestic terrorists, international terrorists. Some of our most serious cases are brought there. And this is getting in the way of the serious business of investigations and prosecutions. And on top of that, it's the credibility of this Department of Justice that's been badly tarnished by, these embarrassing setbacks they're finding when they try and, go around legal requirements.
So, Scott Fredericksen, Lindsey Halligan was appointed after several people resigned, including the then current prosecutor in that district resigned because they did not believe in the merits of the case that the Attorney General and the President of the United States wanted to bring against James Comey. If she is removed from this position, doesn't the administration face the same challenge? In other words, you need to go to Congress to get that position approved. And if you just put in somebody else, if they can even find somebody else to prosecute these cases, aren't they going to run up against that same hill?
Yes, it's an embarrassing position. And keep in mind, this is not the first court to rule this way. This is the fourth court to rule this way. Judges have ruled that Trump's appointment of the interim U.S. attorneys in New Jersey, Nevada, and Southern California are all illegal. So this is the fourth judge to rule this way. So it's a big problem. They've got to follow the rules.
All right. This has been The Scott Show. CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane and former federal prosecutor Scott Fredericksen. We thank you both, gentlemen. Appreciate it.